now, Republican strategist Spencer Sullivan, who's no stranger to us on 5 to 6:30. How are you, Spencer?
Happy to be on. How are you?
Good. Okay, let me ask you, and by the way, we had Maurice Simpson. He's stuck in traffic. It happens in D.C. from time to time. But I want to start with you and talk about those executive orders. First and foremost, the White House is saying by volume of executive orders, President Trump was incredibly effective. What's different about that than when President Obama had executive orders and people on the right were saying, well, that's the mark of a dictator?
Look, I don't think that there's much of a difference here. What I do want to get back to, though, is the rally and the White House Correspondents' Dinner, right? And I think between the rally and White House Correspondents' Dinner, it's this direct contrast of, you know, why not talk to these voters in Pennsylvania that President Trump won in 2016 or are so crucial in winning in 2020, compared to having this insider event with journalists.
It's all about the optics.
You know, the optics is just absolutely crucial on that point.
Let me ask you, though, a lot of people are sticking to this 100-day thing. The president, has come out and said, I've done more than any other president in the first 100 days. But then he criticized this marker as being an artificial barrier. How important is this 100-day, judgment for presidents?
Yeah, I think both sides have come out and realized that this 100 days is kind of a misnomer. Since Truman, only 2 presidents have passed landmark legislation. I think this 100 days is kind of this out-of-date timeline that unfortunately or fortunately doesn't really apply to the current environment, the current policy of the way we pass legislation, right? So instead of judging a president on his first 100 days, why don't we judge a president on his first year?
I think that's a good point, especially since you have a president now who has not navigated Congress ever. He's not had to deal with Congress before, and that's why people voted for him. So I think that's a completely reasonable expectation. Hey, I want to get to something else that happened today. There was some news that came out about President Trump's former National Security Advisor, Michael Flynn. We heard a little bit earlier today from Congressman Elijah Cummings on this. Let's play that. We'll talk on the other side.
The United States Criminal Code, Title 18, Section 1001, provides that knowingly falsifying or concealing a material fact is a felony, which may result in fines up to 5 years and 5 years in imprisonment. Based on these documents, I believe the Oversight Committee should be holding a hearing with General Flynn.
Is the Michael Flynn situation over and done with at this point?
Well, I think Republicans hope it is. I think it's going to continue to drag on. As it continues to drag on, it's only a distraction towards what President Trump is trying to get done for the American people. Unfortunately, Michael Flynn, this will not go away today or tomorrow. But again, unfortunately, it's just one more distraction, unforced error by the administration to continue on with their message.
Yeah.
All right, let's bring in Maurice Simpson now, Democratic strategist. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Who can we blame, Maurice? Who slowed you down out there today?
The traffic, D.C. traffic.
There you go.
I'm a county boy.
You got to always talk about that. All right, so we've been talking about the 100 days. We've been talking about Michael Flynn and this administration's wins and losses. As a Democrat, would you say what are the wins that we've seen so far in the Trump administration?
If you consider attacking women's rights, attacking our environment, attacking working people, if you consider those wins, then they're hitting a home run. But I just don't see any true wins.
What about Neil Gorsuch?
I don't think that's a win for us either. I mean, I think we need to be looking at what's truly important in these first 100 days. He's, failed on every campaign promise that he made to people. We're talking about him stirring up his base. But there's completely a disconnect between what he's promised, what he's doing, and what people expect from him.
But as we look at the video right here, because he made an announcement at Snap-on Tools a while back, and every time the president held up one of those executive orders, especially early on, it was sort of a sign, at least the way I perceived it, of the people in those states, of the Wisconsins of the world, the Pennsylvanians, that said, look, we're going to do what we can. This executive order is going to get the wheels in motion to bring some jobs back. And I think there are people out there that don't care about the political wheeling and dealing. They just want to see results, and they see that as a harbinger that something might be done, whether or not they know how it's going to be done.
Well, that's just a game of moving cups, really. I mean, executive orders are easy. I mean, their strike of a pen is easy for him to come in and roll back, President Obama's executive orders. But when we talk about really maneuvering and delivering for people, you have control of the White House, the Senate, and the House. And, you're not making any legislative victories that truly have impact on people.
Hey, let me ask you, Spencer, too. The president said a lot about democratic obstructionism. Are you seeing that from your perspective here, that the Democrats are standing in the way of a lot of the president's goals?
Look, I think I want to speak to one point that Maurice just made about moving cups. You know, there's this disconnect with the Democrats and the American people. The Washington Post 2 days ago released a poll that said over 2/3 of Americans agreed that the Democratic Party was out of touch with American voters. And within that same poll, nearly half of Democrats agreed that their party was out of touch with the voters. And not only is that a poll, but you look at the results of elections, you look at the results of the state legislators, you look at the results of the executive branch, you look at the results of who's in control of the House and the Senate in all these different states. You know, elections have consequences.
Maurice, you want to give a final word?
I do. I mean, Spencer, I mean, I can appreciate his thoughts on that, but, I mean, he's comparing apples and oranges. When you talk about Democrats being dissatisfied, with our party, that's one thing that we're dealing with. But when 63% of all Americans are, dissatisfied with the performance of this presidency, according to another recent poll that Spencer failed to mention, I think that speaks to the broader concern of this president not delivering.
Well, yeah, that may be 63%, but in that same poll, the Democrats agree that American voters in that same poll, 66% said the Democratic Party was out of touch. Yep. So I'll take 66 over 63.
So if you let Republicans comment on their thoughts on the Democratic Party, I'm sure the number's a little higher.
We could keep this going on and on and on. Certainly from when we've got a Democrat and a Republican in here. Guys, thanks so much for joining us.